Hello, Jonathan. Welcome. How are you today?
Yeah, hi, KJ. Very good, man. Good to be here.
Thank you for taking the time for this short interview sessions with us. You're a very experienced professional. You've worked for many different organizations, various industries, from gaming, I think consulting through charity, different continents, born in Africa, now living in Toronto, Canada. The leading subject I have for us for today is ESG, which stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance. A kind of a new framework that appears on the horizon and should help organizations to make better strategic decisions. So my first question to you is, what is your general perception about ESG?
Yeah, great question, KJ. I think that there's really two forms of ESG in my mind. There's legitimate and illegitimate ESG. For me, legitimate ESG really stems from the concept of capitalism with a conscience, and it's been growing and gaining momentum for many years now, and has kind of coalesced around the concepts of environment, social, and governance. And really, any business leader who has a longer strategic perspective around their business would obviously understand that you form part of a society, and the business forms part of a society, and it forms part of an environment. And so it wants to have a great society and a great environment in which to work in over a longer period of time. If you're into maximizing profits for like a 5, 10 year, 20-year span, maybe ESG is not something that you even consider. But anybody who's playing a longer game, ESG makes sense. However, the illegitimate form of ESG is kind of that, in my mind, that rubber stamp mentality, where it's, oh, look, everybody else is doing it, let's do something to make us look good. A bit of a checkbox kind of mentality, and I don't think that actually will translate to real value for a business.
Right. Thank you for that. I mean, great answer. This brings me kind of naturally to my second question, which is about the avoiding challenges when thinking about ESG implementation, right? Because it covers everything from environmental, social to governance aspects. So how do you avoid those challenges that will be certainly on the way when thinking of ESG strategy implementation?
Yeah, so I think trying to avoid the challenges, first step is you need to identify them. And I think there are a few really deep challenges to ESG. Firstly, it's understanding or trying to identify a framework that you can adopt. There are a number of different ways of determining what should be done in terms of ESG. And there's a number of different standards globally. So figuring out what kind of framework works well for a company is very important. Step before that is figuring out what values are important to a company. And then using that to determine which frameworks actually make sense for you in the long term. Part of the decision making around your values really needs to take into consideration your stakeholders in a business. And by that I mean there are varying perspectives and demands on any business leader and business around what a business is all about. So if you're a shareholder, it's, hey, I want good value on my investment. Thanks. How do you turn around to those kinds of shareholders and show them how ESG is going to deliver long-term value? Then there's obviously let's say your PR that's going, hey, we need to look good in a marketplace. Let's jump on the latest bandwagon. That's a dangerous thing to do. And I think understanding what your values are as a company, very, very important. And then I think in the West, navigating the politicization of ESG is really, really tough. I think there's the interpretation of what it means to be a company with a conscience differs broadly across differing political perspectives. And so this has become a bit of a hotbed and a tough thing for businesses to get through. And then the final one for me would be for multinationals specifically, is dealing with ethnocentrism. You know, if you're a Bay Area company with a global footprint, just because a certain social perspective is important for you does not necessarily make that important for offices elsewhere in the world. And trying to force that actually is a bit of ethnocentrism. It's kind of a basis of sort of a racial perspective. So got to avoid that.
Great insights. Thank you for those. So clearly, like, values first, standards second, avoiding politicization and sort of this kind of ethnocentric approach. This naturally brings me again to my last question, which will be about the latest comment Tesla CEO Elon Musk made on Twitter when he said that the whole ESG thing is a scam.
Right. Yeah.
And it has been weaponized, and it was just after Tesla has been removed from this S&P 500 ESG index. So what do you think about that? So, and his reaction to it?
I think Elon has hit upon one of the concerns that a number of business leaders have around ESG, which is, if we're adopting something that is going to dictate how we do business, who gets to determine whether we pass or fail? Right. And it essentially what we're doing is it's a bit of a Trojan horse. We're inviting something that we will determine as a society that we will live up to as businesses, without giving due consideration to this is exactly what ESG means. And it's, there's a debate and a rationale and a level of professionalism around determining what those standards are. If we don't do that legwork first, it's a Trojan horse, because it can become anything down the line. And in Elon's case, he's fallen out of favor politically with certain parts of the political aisle in America, and that's led to him falling out of favor in terms of ESG, despite what Tesla's doing. So I think he's hit upon something there, and it is a real concern. There are ways around that, though. And I think it goes back to my earlier statement, which is primarily is figuring out what your values are as a company, and translating those values into tangible business action, and therefore your ESG is no longer checkbox. You're not dancing to somebody else's tune. You're dancing to a tune that you hold dear as a business, and that will earn you points and kudos in terms of PR and marketing, and it can be used to derive value for shareholders in the longer term as well.
Right. Thank you for that, Jonathan. Again, great insights and great summary. I'm sure we will continue our ESG discussion, as we've only have of learning
big topic,
scratched the surface. So I'm sure there will be a follow-up. So for now, thank you for your time. It was great chatting with you. Have a good one. And
thanks, KJ.
Until the next time.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.